What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another Tuesday edition of Quick Tips with WeVideo. As always, I am one of your hosts, Ryan Kochevar, and with me today is my co-host, Stu, and a special guest. We have Tisha Poncio from the Wakelet team joining us today. Hi, Tisha.
Hey, how are you?
Doing well. How are you doing?
Well, I'm doing great, Ryan. It's sunny in Texas. It's not too hot. It's not too cold. I cannot complain.
That's great. Yeah, sunny and 75 here in California.
I knew you were going to bring that up. I knew you were, because you always trump me with the weather in California.
Well, you know, it's just a special part of being a resident of the San Francisco Bay Area. It's just beautiful here. I think Stu knows. Stu used to live.
I was going to say, and then Stu's going to come in and like wipe us all out.
Yeah.
Well, I did watch the Aurora Borealis from 12,000 feet last night. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's an awesome feature of living where you do too, Stu. Yeah. So, but yeah, we're coming to you live today for a special episode of the show. We don't have too many guests on the Quick Tips show, so Tisha, you're the first non-WeVideo guest to the show. So you will go down as the first ever non-WeVideo guest in Quick Tips history. So congratulations to you.
Thank you. I love making history. So that is one I will add. I will add that to my portfolio.
It's fantastic. And portfolio, what a great segue into what we're going to be talking about today with Tisha. Yes. It is Digital Citizenship Week. And every year it's an annual campaign that Common Sense Media uses to promote the teaching of digital citizenship in the classroom and encouraging not just teachers, but educators everywhere and even parents on the importance of digital citizenship, what it means to be online in the digital age, and helping everyone understand the very important components of that and what it means. So we're going to do some of that today with you all. We're going to share some ideas on Wakelet collections that you can access to facilitate these, some WeVideo activities. We talked about 2 digital citizenship activities in last week's episode. So if you are interested in learning more about those 2 specific activities, you can go check out that Quick Tip show after you're done watching us today, because we're not going to have time to get into the nuts and bolts of these activities. We're going to talk about digital citizenship at maybe a little bit of a higher level. So if you are interested in digging deeper, we've got that episode for you last week. So let's dig in. Let's get, I think we're going to get started. I just want to kind of set the stage here and speak to both of you about kind of, and we're all former educators. We've all been working in this space for some time. So we talked a little bit about like what digital citizenship meant to Stu last week. And so Tisha, as the guest today, like talk us through your experience with digital citizenship, like how you've interacted with it, with students, with other educators, and let us know a little bit about how you've facilitated these activities in the past.
Well, to even talk about that, I would have to tell you kind of who I am a little bit. So I'm Tisha Poncio. Yeah, I am community engagement at Wakelet, but I wasn't always. I was a classroom teacher and a digital learning coach for a total of 21 years and a coach for 13. So I feel so lucky to really kind of have the experience before EdTech became a huge thing in our lives and our students' lives. But also on the flip side of that, I've watched the transformation of technology with my own kids. I was telling the guys earlier, I have a 24-year-old, a 19-year-old, and a 14-year-old. And I can remember the transformation of each of them with technology, what I did as a parent, but then also working with my students. If you don't know me, what I can tell you about my purpose in life is to empower others. So that's my goal. And it doesn't matter what room I walk into, I know that's my goal there. So I started coaching and realized that when iPads came on the scene, nobody really knew what to do. And if you think about it, I'm Gen X, probably leaning more towards a millennial. So if you were wondering, my person, you're like, not really Gen X, but we didn't know. Nobody taught us the things that we're doing right now, the 3 of us on, recording this episode and like preparing. Nobody taught us. This wasn't a thing. And so I started seeing gaps, not just with the teachers, right? The students had less gaps, but the parents really were the ones that were so afraid. And that is where my digital citizenship journey actually started. I decided to put together some parent classes that would be an open forum, a safe place for them to discuss their concerns, right? And then for me to sort of debunk what they thought was reality and show them and teach them how to create their own profiles and get into the settings and look at all of those things. And then I would hit on behavior because, as you know, digital citizenship and digital literacy, there's so much to deep dive. We don't have time to do it here, but you have the behaviors. And then you also have the security and the privacy and the settings. And so those are two really big pieces of digital citizenship. Interestingly enough, that's what led me to Wakelet, because I was the teacher who thought, okay, well, we're doing digital citizenship once a week, this week only. Why are we doing that? That is not serving anybody in the world. 0 to 95, if anybody is on a device or using technology, those skills are so important. And if you don't do them every single day, you're like, how are you going to know them? Yeah. And in order to teach our kids, we have to model that. And in order to model that, we have to become uncomfortable. And that is uncomfortable still, even for me sometimes with all the new technology. So I used Wakelet to, with my students so that they could learn how to curate information for a meaningful purpose. So they were curating on TikTok and Instagram and Twitter and whatever was popular, but I wanted to show them that there was a purpose. And so Wakelet allowed them to save and organize all kinds of information and vet articles. And now we're really diving deep, right, into the literacy and what's true and what's not true. And how do we, you know, if you create an image, you're going to give yourself credit. And if somebody takes that, you have to give them credit. It started really, it did. This is really the Wakelet story for me, is it was creating conversations in the classroom that I was not having. And it was organic, right? Because they're putting their videos in the collection and they're putting their image creations in the collection and they're, you know, researching things and then also vetting my research. So my students got to where they would criticize and become critical, not in a mean way, but critical of what I was adding for them. And they would say, this resource isn't that good, Ms. Poncio. Why are you choosing that? Look at this one over here. And that created a dialogue. And essentially that is how I ended up at Wakelet, because my students were empowered in a way as digital citizens that I've never seen before. And it is my passion. I talk about it all the time. And of course, you know, I have the ISTE standards just right here.
That's right. At your fingertips. And if
I need a pocket ISTE standard book. If ISTE is watching, I want like a little pocket like dictionary that I can hold, where in the first half it's like the principles, ASCD principles, and then the ISTE standards. That would be me. I'm such a nerd about that. But yeah,
that would be the ultimate nerd video for sure.
I have something for you. I actually designed ISTE cards, like little baseball cards for each of the ISTE standards. I'm going to send you a deck.
Trading cards.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Stu. I am not going to trade them. I'm going to keep them.
That's amazing, Stu. I love that. And for any of you out there who have never met Tisha in person or seen or been at a conference or attended a workshop of hers, I think empowering is the right word. Just bring that energy to everything, right? So I could see how that would translate into the classroom, specifically to this topic. And what you were saying about using Wakelet to collect your online presence, essentially, right? And that's a huge part of digital citizenship, is like, who are you online? What's your digital footprint? What's being communicated to the world about who you are, or your likes, your dislikes, things like that. And doing it with intention, which I think you said very smartly, is that like, this is a way to do this kind of thing intentionally.
Yeah, if you think about it, I mean, even for us, I say it's 0 to 95 because it doesn't matter who you're talking to. We all have a digital footprint, but just even if you took the three of us and you Googled all of our names, now there's an activity for you right there. I did that activity with my students, and it becomes this like living resume essentially. And so when you think about, your own personal living resume, and then you're having your students think about it, that's stressful. So it makes you reflect. Now we're talking about the learning cycle. Now we're reflecting on what we've done in the past and how are we going to change it for the future, right?
Totally.
And a lot of missed opportunities, I think, for some of those early days students who didn't have that knowledge or those skills. They were missing scholarships because of what they were posting. And that's a personal story. I watched that happen at my high school. They just didn't think about it. And then they got a scholarship, and then suddenly they didn't have a scholarship anymore because of that. So it is very, very important, and more important than just a week.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something Stu and I talked about last week, right? Like, it's not this one snapshot of, we're going to teach these skills in isolation, and then we're going to move on to the next unit or whatever. It's digital citizenship week once every October. This is what we're going to focus on for this week and this week only, and then we move on. Talking about sprinkling it in, peppering it into all aspects of the curriculum. A lot of schools, I know a lot of librarians will do a lot of this work, and the core content teachers are like, well, I have my digital media electives, or I have my librarians that are going to do this stuff for me. But it's really important that especially if you're using tech or whatever it is, doing research for a 3rd grade animal reports project, like those are opportunities to teach digital citizenship skills.
Ryan, you're right. What you just said about, I heard that a lot. Well, I have to do these learning standards, and I have to meet these goals, and I have to get my students ready for the test. And it wasn't top of mind. Somebody else was going to do it. So if I talk about this in my presentations, because this is really where I started presenting. If the teachers are thinking somebody else is going to do it, and the principals and administrators are thinking someone else is going to do it, and the parents are thinking someone else is going to do it, years have gone by and nobody has taught them these skills. And then we wonder, when we go into a place of business or a restaurant, why students don't have the skills. Now they're adults. Like, we are the problem. Is that what Taylor Swift says? Like, it's us. I'm publicly now going to tell you, I'm not a huge Taylor Swift fan, not because I don't like her, but I don't know a lot about it. But you said something that I thought was interesting. And you said, it can't just be like we're just going to check that box off. And now we're moving on. I started thinking, this is new. So you're getting brand new Tisha ideas now.
It's great. This is why we have you as a guest on the show.
Digital citizenship skills, information literacy skills.
Yep.
It's the responsibility of all of us. Make it stick like glitter. That has been spilled in your car and you are vacuuming that up. You can't. It sticks. It stays. And I think that is what you want your students to. You want to talk about it with them so often that they're annoyed, and you're annoyed with yourself.
Yes.
I was, but they're taking that on. I have a former student, Julie. And you may have seen her portfolios for Wakelet. If you aren't familiar with Wakelet, you can probably search Julie with an I and not an E, Wakelet, and you'll see her. You can find her on LinkedIn. She texted me today and said, and she's an adult. She's an adult job now, doing marketing and doing great because of her Wakelet portfolio. She said, Ms. Poncio, I've connected with all of these people who are Wakelet ambassadors on LinkedIn, because we started LinkedIn profiles very early on. And she said, they're sending me photos of presenting my portfolio. And now she's made a global connection. So I started that with her early on. Global connections are a whole lot of wealth in there. And she's texting me saying, look, I've made a connection in Poland that I never would have had. And I just think it's powerful for those students. You just never know what happens when you make the glitter stick. They're walking around with glitter.
We should just have an episode of just stories, because I've already had to stop myself from telling 3 or 4 different tangent stories just about references that you're making right now. I have a whole bunch of things just in the brain that we won't be able to get to this, because
this is the Tisha Ryan dynamic. And I'm like, Stu, I feel like Stu hasn't said anything yet. And we're like, Stu, tell me something.
I mean, I can relate to that too. I'm wanting to ask about how the glitter got to the floor of the car so bad, but resisting that urge as well.
It was a project, Stu, at school. They put the glue on, but it isn't really on the glue.
Didn't fall around to the paper, right?
Exactly.
I love what you're saying. I think I was thinking, one of the things that we chatted about last week was the importance of teaching digital citizenship in context, as opposed to, like you're saying, just, sort of out of context for the, scope of a week, but being something that you kind of come back to. And we talked a bit about some of the lessons around like copyright and fair use when you're creating media and potentially using other people's creative work. I think the same thing goes for creating collections on Wakelet, right? If you're curating collections that might involve other people's work, you might want to, attribute their work to them. And you might be thinking about things like digital footprint if it's going to be a public piece that you've curated and are going to share publicly. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to do some really exciting things in the classroom and teach digital citizenship in context.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So like we've been talking about this amazing curation tool, like let's see it, because I use this daily in our development and design of the way we share resources with our WeVideo customers. So those of you out there who are using our Wakelet collections, thank you, because we've found them valuable to kind of package things together and do exactly what you were talking about earlier, designing with intention, creating a digital footprint with intention. Now we're an organization, right? And we're going to be talking about how individuals might do this, but just wanted to kind of share that. So we have Wakelet collections. We've produced this special one for this episode today and for you to utilize in your teaching this week and beyond, as we've said. So I put the link in the description below where you can find all of our show notes, anything you're looking for, any links that we're talking about that you'll be able to access through the description down below. So here's our Wakelet collection on teaching digital citizenship with WeVideo. We've got a ton of WeVideo activities that we'll share with you in here, but I know Tisha has also dropped in some great Wakelet resources from other users that you can access as well. So Tisha, just the elevator pitch for Wakelet. We've kind of been dancing around it, talking about it as a portfolio or a curation software, but just the TLDR, if you will, on
essentially anything that you're using in the classroom. It could be anything. You can link any URL into a Wakelet collection. You can add text. Of course, we have Microsoft Immersive Reader. You can upload images. There's a Canva integration. Any Wakelet collections like the one Ryan is sharing with you for this episode, you can actually save it to your bookmarks. You could put this collection inside of another collection. So, and then we also have PDFs. I still love PDFs. And then we have the waffle with the other integrations that you can utilize just right inside of there. But essentially, Ryan, I've never come across anything that isn't going to go in a Wakelet collection. And that means that you can streamline your resources for your students, just like I did, and create choice boards and student-paced lesson plans. And now you're really shifting from being the sage on the stage, like they say, to being the facilitator and letting your students really lead that class. So because I love app smashing and I love standards because I'm a nerd, I added this graphic. And Ryan, if you click on that picture, you'll see. So you're going to see a couple of things here with Wakelet that we've been modeling just while we're giving you this content. But you can see I created this graphic in Canva and I just shared the link, or actually on this one, I downloaded a PNG file and put it into Ryan's collection here. But essentially what I've done is I've made a very easy choice board for you and your students, combining Wakelet and WeVideo. The focus is digital citizenship. It meets ISTE standards, ASCD, transformational learning principles, and I've listed them below each of the activities. But as an educator, you may be, if you're from Texas, you're going to use the TEKS. So maybe you're going to pull your TEKS down there. And if you are using something else, you can add those in. And essentially what happens is now you're stacking standards upon standard, right? With the Wakelet WeVideo combination, but you're also teaching your students digital citizenship along the way. And these could be used any time of year. You don't just have to use them for this 1 week. But it's about students creating and students collaborating and again, promoting and kind of addressing and diving deeper on those digital citizenship skills that we've talked about already, instead of just surface level, basic multiple choice questions. We don't like that as teachers. So why do we think our students are going to learn from that? We need to give them room to kind of dig deep and ask questions.
Yeah, and I love this, the focus on digital citizenship in this kind of 3-step project here, and the call to action where you can utilize even the activities we're suggesting today. There's many other activities, even our October Creative Challenge, which I'll hit on at the end, which is a partnership with KQED and their Youth Media Challenge, is something that could be used to support digital citizenship and advocate for change. But this advocacy campaign, right? You're creating videos about digital citizenship, whatever it is that you're advocating for. You're using a Wakelet collection to put together multiple different modes of resources that you can share. And what's cool about the integrations here is that you can put WeVideo videos inside of Wakelet. You can also grab them right from Google Drive. So I know a lot of our users save all of their video content to Drive, and then you're easily able to pull those videos in from your Drive to quickly populate a collection with the video content that you've made.
Talk about a quick tip. That's it right there. Because that was a headache as a coach. I was sending out Google Drive documents and spreadsheets and whatever. And it's hard to manage that, especially for teachers who maybe aren't really confident. So I would create collections and I would put those Google Drive links in there. But you're absolutely right. There's lots of ways to incorporate WeVideos into a Wakelet collection. Ryan's going to show you some examples. I've just added here a blog, top 5 ways to use Wakelet, again, tied to the ISTE standards. There's a student certified course. So if you really want your students to learn the platform without you having to do all of the speaking, they can go through that course. And then we have a student ambassador program. Those are tasks, real world tasks, where they are learning how to use Wakelet, but they're also learning digital citizenship skills. And then you can sort of build on top of that with your curriculum and your project-based learning or whatever you have in the classroom. And then the next image, actually, Ryan, I wanted to model this because I've given credit. If you click on that photo, again, this is just a screenshot, but this is an example of Kelly in Frisco ISD, and this is her choice board. And she sent me her entire Wakelet collection.
Awesome.
If that's something that you want to look at, I'm giving Kelly complete credit on this, but I know she'd be willing to share it with you. It's just how Frisco ISD is using Wakelet in their classrooms. And I believe Frisco is also a WeVideo school.
Frisco,
right?
Shout out to Frisco ISD because they are major WeVideo users. This is the perfect example. I think this is just one of those coincidences that you presented information, because we didn't talk about this beforehand about using Frisco's materials, but like they definitely are big WeVideo users, especially in the secondary departments, in the middle school and the high school. So podcasting and video presentations are big use cases for them. So again, a Wakelet collection that suggests that work and that uses both of our tools for maximum student success.
Absolutely. And I will add my contact information to the collection, but you can email me, tisha@wakelet.com. And if you are interested in seeing Kelly's collection, I know she wouldn't mind me sharing it. It's a really, really great way to use Wakelet, not just with your students, but also with your teachers, and have them do things. Have your teachers create videos. Like, they're not going to be comfortable letting their students do something until you've allowed them to practice and feel comfortable and safe in doing so themselves.
Yep, absolutely.
And then we have the superhero thing that we did. And I know Stu is going to talk more about this with you, but I included the collection. So you could go look at the Wakelet collection and find out which EduHero you are. And then the extension activity, Stu, would be to what?
We can scroll down to the digital citizen superhero activity. We talked a bit about this last week. So if you want kind of like the deep dive on this activity, check out our episode from last week. But essentially this activity builds on a lesson that's in the Common Sense Media curriculum for digital citizenship, where they have students design a digital citizen superhero, somebody who practices positive digital citizenship, takes what they've learned through this curriculum and puts it into action in the world, but through the creative sort of imaginary process of designing a superhero. And then, students from there could design like a comic book, or they could create a video, sort of a movie for their superhero character. And so we've talked about having students create like a trailer for a superhero movie. They could design the superhero and the villain and some basic plot points, and then create a trailer for that film. And that's just a super fun, creative process for kids to really think about and process the information that they're learning, and then apply it to a new context and hit on some of those higher order thinking skills.
And also peer feedback of those videos, right?
Yep.
I didn't put anything about that in here, but I think that the peer-to-peer feedback, if you think about it, everything we're talking about is really what the students are experiencing, whether they are on their video games, right? My son plays video games and VR, and if they're on social media, you're always getting feedback. You're getting the likes, you're getting the comments, right? You're getting the reposts or whatever, the stitches. Or I just think it's really important to note that everything that the three of us are talking about is really putting them in a real world situation that if they're not on social media and you've locked them down, they're eventually going to be on it. And so they're going to be doing those things.
Yeah, it's unavoidable at this point, I think. And so teaching the right way to exist online is, in my opinion, more appropriate than trying to ban it forever, right? I think that those are just exhausting. That's an exhausting mindset to have.
It's a fear. It really is leading yourself in fear. And I think that, we don't have enough time to get into this, but I made a contract, Ryan. I know my kids are older than yours, but I made a contract with my kids probably when they were 11 or 12. And I did let them have social media early. I'm not afraid to publicly tell you all that. I did, because I knew that if I could have their ear then, before they got to those teenage years where everything I said was wrong, I wanted to hit on that, and I wanted to teach them the right way to do it. And so I don't have really a whole lot of concerns with my own kids. Quite the opposite. And I don't know if you guys are seeing this, but I feel like the kids who were really immersed and born into that digital age, I feel like a lot of them are like, okay, well, we just want to take a break from that because they've only had that. So now they're kind of flip-flopping. My daughter wanted a digital camera, or, like a disposable camera as a gift. And I was like,
I love it.
Well, I have a digital camera from like 2000. Do you think that's what you want?
Polaroid cameras are coming back. But yeah,
they are.
This is to talk on that. I think you're right. The pendulum, there's a pendulum to all of this, and it swung really far in one direction in this last generation. And I imagine I'm curious to see how it evolves, especially with the more intentional media education that I think is happening. I mean, I don't think it's happening as broadly as it should, but I think things like this week raises awareness about it. These activities can help you facilitate it. I think the reason, and go back and watch, please go back and watch last week's episode, because we get deep into that digital citizen superheroes episode. I think Stu designed that for last year's digital citizenship timeframe in October. But superheroes are all the rage these days, so it's a fun, creative activity to do. You can sort of loosely align it with the EduGuardian partnership that Wakelet had, and that what edu hero are you kind of thing, and kind of think of those two things side by side. But like Stu said, it was based on a Common Sense Education's digital citizenship curriculum. We've linked that here for you. So you can head over to their site and consume all of the resources that they have. It's a wonderful organization whose mission it is to spread this knowledge and make sure that we are educating our children and our youth about these important topics about being online. And just as we kind of wrap up here, we've got a couple of other activities in our assignment ideas library. The really cool thing about this collection is if you are a WeVideo customer or subscriber, if you have access to our WeVideo for School subscription and you're logged into the product while you're viewing this collection, clicking these links will take you right to the assignment that you might want to assign. And you can quickly and easily assign this to your class, right? I clicked that link and it jumped me right into the digital superheroes assignment. So if you are a subscriber, it's really cool. You can click it directly from the collection. You can get to the page, the assignment idea page, and you can save it as a draft to your class, assign it to your students, and off you go, making your digital citizen superhero, which again is a really cool and fun project for the kids to do.
Yeah, I agree.
And then the other, just to touch on real quick, I'm going to share this. I've included you can access the sample videos from the lessons themselves, but if you just wanted to click on them and view them directly from the collection, they're here for you. And then, like I said, we have our creative challenge up here as well. It's our couple episodes ago, our beginning of the month episode was introducing this challenge for October. It's our Call for Change challenge that, again, is being done in partnership with KQED, which is Northern California's PBS affiliate. So please, I encourage you to check that out. That's a really great project on digging into positions and argumentative essay writing and applying that as a video. So it does fit with some of the digital citizenship skills that we're talking about as well.
Yeah, I would say on that one, thinking about, Common Sense has like the big buckets that they talk about. We've mentioned a few: media balance, digital footprint, et cetera. There's the news and media literacy one, right?
Yep.
And information literacy, learning to identify bias, learning to assess information for credibility, and decipher fact from, what may not be factual. And so I think those are some good skills for that creative challenge.
Yeah, for sure. So just as we kind of wrap up, sort of some final thoughts, some parting thoughts on this really important topic in this really important week that I'm really happy that we were able to have you on the show today to talk about this, because I think there's such a great value to our viewers to hear 2 weeks in a row perspectives on digital citizenship, because it is important. So any parting words for the viewing audience today?
I think just my parting words is don't stop. Start doing something, right? It doesn't have to be some of these bigger projects that maybe you've seen, or even on my graphic. Do something. You can start slow with them and just have them. It is scary to have your students do peer-to-peer feedback or discussion. It is, because it puts a lot of responsibility on you to facilitate that. Yeah. But I think start slow. That's what I did. It was very small, and then gradually increase that and grow with your students to where they are creating some phenomenal videos. Eventually they have video portfolios, right? They have a Wakelet portfolio. You want something that they can take with them and show that they've really learned that skill. And then that is even transferable to, like Julie, their career. She's on LinkedIn connecting with global people who are seeing her work still and watching it transform. I don't think there's anything more powerful, honestly, even for me, than that story. Start with, like Ryan gave you all great resources. I've given you a couple of Wakelet resources to support you. If you are scared about any of that, I started with the ISTE student standards, and I just started with the digital citizenship. That's it. That's all I started with. And I thought, okay, if I can hit these at least once a week or more, then at least I feel like I'm doing something and I'm making a little bit of progress. So I would recommend looking at those and the transformational learning principles. But don't be overwhelmed. That's the thing. You are where you are, and you're going to grow with your students. It's the same thing for them too. So you got to model it.
It's a great message. And I've failed to say that our assignment ideas are also aligned to ISTE student standards. So
yeah, of course.
What your Tisha was promoting and showing you on how the activity card that she built that was aligned to those ISTE standards, our projects are as well. So
exactly.
Another sort of thing to help you get started with how to align this.
It kind of gives it gives teachers, and I think even administrators, sound mind, like, oh, these are really going to help us get to where we need to go with these students. And when you can do that and you're comfortable in that, you'll keep doing it. Yep. That is exactly how I started doing it. So thank you, Ryan and Stu, for this lovely meeting on this is my favorite topic. A lot of people do not know it's my favorite topic. I love, because it's never going to go away. You said it. It's never going to go away. And it doesn't matter how much older we all get. It's still going to be there.
In some various form and some various way. Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much, Tisha, for coming on. Again, please, if you've made it this far into this video, please give us a like, hit that notification bell, and subscribe to Quick Tips with WeVideo so you don't miss any releases of content. We're going to have we're going to turn to a different and spookier topic next week. We're going to have Jen Lieben, a longtime WeVideo brand ambassador, on to share some fun editing tips and tricks as we head into the meat of the Halloween season. So we're going to kind of turn the page on digital citizenship for now. But we'll have to have you back on talking, because there were so many topics. We just have like Tisha, Stu, and Ryan, just fun stories.
It could be a series. It probably could be a series.
It could be, honestly.
Thanks again, guys.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you to all of you out there viewing. Give us a comment, give us a like. Please follow and subscribe to our channel for more amazing content all about WeVideo and other tools that we'll have on in the future as well. But until then, happy creating. Bye now.